Hey now, welcome to the dirty side of the track, America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian, that's Rob. We had an actual race that was worth watching yesterday, whatever time it was. Welcome, Rob.
Hey, welcome, Brian. It was best one of the season, I would say, which isn't saying too much because we both had to argue about how much you hated the first two and how I was
Yes,
slightly more optimistic about them. But no, great race, and I think a sign that it was a great Australian race, which it isn't always a great Australian race, is that A, I didn't fall asleep on the sofa, and B, it felt like it was over like in about 20 minutes. It just went by so fast. So I think that's always a good sign that you've enjoyed a race.
I was actually guarding for lulls, like waiting for the boring parts,
Mm.
and I started writing the notes. Oh, here one, and then it never quite came. So,
Well,
which is
we'll
I'm
get
appreciative of
there.
that.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
get there because I think you're right. I think every time it threatened a lull, something happened. Not necessarily right up at the top, but there was always a battle that the camera could go to whenever I thought, "Oh, are we on the edge of Lullsville?" No, no, there's a battle over there. So anyway, we'll come to that. We've got news and social, video vault, Australian review, and then no preview because we get a week off before Japan. So uh, let's dive in. Um, Not the greatest start to the week, really,
nope.
with lots of rubbish going on in the FIA. So Susie Wolff put out a statement to say that she has personally filed a criminal complaint in the French courts about the statements made by the FIA last year. So, yeah, she's going all in, and I would say, good on her because they put their statements out last year about the conflict of interest with her and Toto, and yeah, she's decided she's not going to stand for it. So what was the final part of her statement? Well, something that may think silence absolves them from responsibility, it does not.
And
Shots fired.
in her statement, she highlighted a date that she filed the criminal complaint in the French courts on the 4th of March. And you may say, well, why is that important? Because that was the same day, I believe, where we learned, or at least when she filed it, when this announcement came out, was the same day we found out that the FIA Ethics Committee finds no evidence, surprise, surprise, of interference by FIA president in the 2023 Formula One events in Saudi Arabia or Las Vegas. So all of the rumors, the whistleblower, the stories, we want Fernando on the podium, we don't want Vegas to happen, all of that, according to the Ethics Committee, finds no evidence of interference. Just a bunch of smoke.
And
But don't worry, no fire, don't look over here.
then they interviewed Lewis and asked him about what he kind of thinks of it. And he said, "Oh, well, with the FIA, things are happening behind closed doors, and there's no accountability, and the fans need that." Oh my gosh, it's like
It's
I don't know,
crazy.
not a good look for the FIA this week. But let's not dwell on that. What will be will be. And what might be is that maybe we'll see Mazepin racing again one day.
I don't think so, but at least not in
I didn't say
F1.
in
But
F1.
yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't say in F1.
Bring back Goat Tiffy first.
So he's had his European Union sanctions overturned because they said that because of his connection to his father and Putin and the Russian invasion of the Ukraine, he'd been banned from all European events. They basically said that the link to his father is not enough for him to remain on the sanctions list. He's kind of getting, guilty by association, which I don't want to get too political on this. So maybe I'm just going to sit right on the fence. And do you want to move on, Brian?
Let's move along to one where it was exciting news, right? Zach Brown's contract was extended to 2030 at McLaren, and at the same time, Bahrain's sovereign wealth fund has taken full ownership of the McLaren Group, which includes a majority stake in the McLaren F1 team. So now we have what's a pretty interesting engine for deals, as they called themselves. And I can't wait to see what that means. And, McLaren looked good this weekend.
Yeah.
They've
Yeah.
looked good over the last almost year since Austria, since the upgrades. They have two young drivers who seem to be performing well. You got to think if you really took a long-term view of a lot of teams, McLaren's one on the rise still.
Yeah. 100%. Their stock is on the rise, definitely. Talking about stock on the rise, one thing whose stock is not on the rise is the person whose job it is to key in the
Oh,
Excel sheet in
jeez.
Williams.
How is this real?
So I couldn't believe this when it came out. Although then again, you and I, working in kind of the insurance industry, we both know that there are many a company out there that have crucial Excel at the heart of their organization, which nobody wants to touch because nobody understands how it works. But if you put a value into cell A2, the right things come out. And it sounds like James Vowles was kind of, taking a look around the factory, deciding what he needs to change as he takes Williams towards the brave new world. So, right, okay, let's go and have a look at our parts inventory. Take me to the parts inventory catalog. And why are you clicking on Excel to take me to the parts inventory catalog? Oh, well, boss. Thing is, we've got this Excel.
Someone highlighted that on Twitter, and I missed it quickly when I was going through the story. I didn't really understand it yet, the Excel aspects on whatever Thursday night, Friday morning. And they had different things in Excel, and there were like an X next to the ones they'd done, like pack lunch for Alex. X. Remember to get sponsors. X. Build extra chassis. Empty. Jesus Christ.
Oh,
they're using Excel to manage their parts? Oh my God.
Yeah, he said, was it this colossal Excel file lacked information on how much each of the parts cost, the time it took to produce them, along with whether the parts were already on order or not. Prioritizing one car section over another from manufacture through inspection was impossible, said Vowles. When you start tracking now hundreds and thousands of components for your organization and how they move around your organization, an Excel spreadsheet is useless. No wonder there wasn't a third chassis, like you say, in Melbourne. Oh my gosh.
Unbelievable. And I don't have the sounds this week. I apologize to all listeners. I am in a hotel room in Boston, kneeling on the floor in front of a chair, which is holding up my laptop and microphone. So I have a tiny window.
You are so dedicated to the cause, Brian.
I'm trying my best over here. So I do not have all the sounds this week. I have just Pitlane Paul. So as we journey to the rumor mill and Rob starts us off, just imagine the sound of a helicopter and Rob leaning out the side, a dashing young British journalist talking about Formula One. And then now imagine actually what Rob looks like, and we'll let him go.
How dare you? Yeah, so I'm hovering over the rumor mill, and we both found two opposite sides to the same individuals. So there was a rumor going around that Lewis had a large offer from Ferrari, which could finally see his dream of working with Lewis become a reality. Or in the second helicopter over the rumor mill is Brian, because he found this one.
Aramco is looking at a full takeover of the Aston Martin F1 team and targeting a Newey-Verstappen combo at Aston Martin, per somebody via Vincenzo Landino. So, everybody wants Newey. We've always heard he wants to go to Ferrari and would like to partner with Lewis. We've heard that quite a bit, and I agree with you. I've heard more of it recently. This was newer, this whole Aramco full takeover of Aston Martin, and they want to bring in Newey and Verstappen. That would be very interesting.
Yes. I mean, you've said it before. You called it right at the beginning. In fact, you were calling it last year. This year's silly season is going to be the silliest, and it might well extend beyond just drivers. Newey, people of ownership of teams. I just think it's going to be the most ridiculous silly season. So, okay. Let's open up the video vote.
Okay. I only really have two things because it has been a bit of a crazy week. The first is Charles and Carlos Albert Park guide. It's 90 seconds on the Ferrari channel proper. Give me the old C² format back. Give me the Scuderia Ferrari F1 channel format back. Give me the 5 minutes of them talking about the track. This is 90 seconds, and a good half of it is intro and outro. So it's like 45 seconds of the two of them like talking a little bit about the track, and I'm like, it could be so much more. So I'm a little down, even though we'll talk about a great performance on track. I was a little down on that. However, possibly the greatest F1 commercial ever. And the Pizza Huts of the olden days and the Damon Hills and all these stories, I don't think they can be beaten by Valtteri's Uber commercial in Australia. So before I talk about the reaction to it from other drivers on Instagram, Rob, did you love this thing as much as I did?
It was just absolutely amazing. I mean, there were two of them, weren't there? There was a second part to it as well, and I was really hoping that Pitlane Paul was going to star as the double for Valtteri, but alas, he didn't. But just genius. It's just absolute genius. If you want all the Aussie kind of stereotypes that they threw in there, it was chef's kiss for nailing each of those. But oh my gosh, think Valtteri might have a career in acting after the F1 thing, because some of the comedy timing in there, when the bug spray goes off on the back of the car, the little cough that he does at exactly the right moment. I mean, it is just comedy genius. And like you say, if you want to go through some of the reactions you found, the internet absolutely agreed and just exploded with kind of support of one of the funniest commercials seen for a long time.
Daniel Ricciardo. It's a special feeling to have three Aussies on the grid. Daniel Ricciardo himself, Lewis Hamilton. I'm actually in tears. This is so good, bro. Pierre Gasly, legend. We had a variety of podcasters respond. Then Aussie Man. Now, if you've never watched Aussie Man, you're doing it wrong. Great commentary on videos unrelated to F1. Bottas is more Aussie Man than Aussie Man. I mean, it gets no higher praise than that from Aussie Man. Will Buxton, outstanding. And then even Uber Australia came back in with a car fit for an Aussie. I mean, it was so good. I actually sent out on our, I almost said corporate, on our podcast Twitter, I asked virtual statman Sean Kelly himself. I said, Sean, has anyone ever won driver of the day on a Wednesday? And he said, I don't think so, but I think he just did. So that was tremendous. It makes me smile. I like to go back. It'll be in my rotation when I'm down. I'm like, oh, I'll go watch Valtteri's Uber commercial.
Right. Should we try this sound effect of shutting the door? No.
Bang. Oh, man.
Oh, man. Right. So, race week. Normally, we skirt over practice because not a lot happens, and we say, yeah, practice is practice. Couldn't read much into the times. Here we go. However, one of the biggest stories of the week happened in FP1, where Alex Albon decided he wanted to see just how much impact his chassis could take and still live to fight another day. And he got it wrong because he went just over that threshold and completely smashed it.
Unbelievable. There was a hole in it. My understanding is you can actually put your hand or part of your fingers through the chassis, which is not like you can just put some duct tape over that. That's unsafe for the driver. They have to go effectively put it back together at the factory.
It's okay, because you just get the third chassis and just build it for Alex, don't you?
Wait, we already talked about Excel told them they didn't have a spare yet.
Oh, man. And I thought it was because they'd been not late. Well, they had been late to practice, not as late as they had in previous years, but they've been late getting everything together. Maybe their manufacturing cycle hadn't been ready, and maybe you have to sea freight these things, and they just missed the window to get this out to Australia. But Pitlane Paul came back and said, no, chassis actually goes down into a very small box, much smaller than you would imagine, and that's air freight. So they just didn't have one built. Nothing to do with kind of lead time from beginning of the season and putting it on a boat. So yeah, no second chassis. So that's you done, Alex. Unlucky. You crashed your car over to Logan. Or so you might think.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's... So, as you watch this unfold and you saw the news, I did remember, and we talked about this, at preseason testing, they didn't unveil the car, and they didn't do... Like, they did that thing in New York, but then they did not do any preseason running, any photo shoots or any time at Silverstone like other teams. They just showed right up to testing with the car because it had just been finished. So they were on the edge of not really being prepared again. And I joked about Paddy Lowe at the time from the 2019 season, which was made famous as the first Drive to Survive. And they showed up with no car at testing for a while because of the way that it all came together. And so it felt like that at the beginning of this year, and it's obviously the case. They did not have an extra chassis ready to go. They have two. That's all they had time to make for the season. They're 2 races in, and they're not ready. And it could not be more evident than in this cost cap era, teams with sponsors who have money still can't get things together at the bottom half of the field and be as prepared. I promise you, Red Bull has an extra. I promise you, Mercedes has an extra.
Yeah.
I don't know if everybody does. But I can tell you those top teams do. I bet you Ferrari has an extra.
Yeah.
And so to your point, they made the decision, and there's a stat on this. In a season where points look like a rare prize for the midfield teams, Williams chose to prioritize Albon over Logan, and Albon scored 86% of its points since the start of 22. So, I mean, they needed a point, and they almost got one. It's a hard decision. I think they made the right one. I hate to say it as much as we cheer for Logan. I think they made the right decision. What would you have done the same, Rob, or would you have done something different?
Absolutely. I think the people coming out saying it's not right and it shouldn't be allowed. Well, it is a team sport. Even though the individual drivers look after themselves to some degree and they're competing in the Drivers' Championship, it is a team sport. And if you looking after trying to get points for your team, you are going to go with the guy that has got the most chance of getting points. If Max had crashed and they didn't have a third chassis, you think Checo gets to drive? Stroll
Nope.
over Alonso. Yeah, any of the teams that have got an absolute number one versus number two, I think you're always going to back your number one driver. As harsh as it is, and as bad as Logan's going to feel, it's just the team sport. That's just the way it goes. And hopefully they can get their act together and A, not have a shunt like this that breaks another chassis, and B, actually have a third one just in case they do. So yeah, so that was kind of really the only other notes I wrote from practice was that Max damaged his floor in FP1 and just lost a little bit of running time. I wrote Ferrari looked quick. And Stroll outperforms Alonso in FP2 quite well. And I said, for what it's worth in in practice, let's see how it pans out, which we shall come back to. Quali, quali in Q1, they said that we lost Sargent. I don't think we did. I don't think he technically even arrived at Q1.
We never had Sargent.
Gasman, Hulk, Joe, Danny Rick, who did not have the greatest of weekends, and track limits meant that he had got into the top 15. Track limits deleted. Sayonara, Danny Rick.
Yeah,
not
so
a good
sad.
luck.
I was so pumped when he made it through, and it looked good, and then it came on like, oh no, track limits, he's out in Q1. I'm like, oh, the local boy. There's a feel. He was slow in practice. His answers to questions, he's starting to feel like the McLaren slip slide again, and I don't want to believe it. I don't, but maybe this is the beginning of that. Let's hope it's not. It's just it's a bad weekend followed by a bad weekend 2 weeks ago. Let's hope that's all it is, and he gets back on track in the next couple races in Japan and China. But man, it's starting to feel eerily similar to McLaren a couple years ago.
Yeah, I'd agree. And just to rub it in Q2, we lost Ocon, K-Mag, Albon, Bottas, and Hamilton. And one of the names that I haven't mentioned in those that we lost is Yuki Tsunoda, who made it through to Q3. And not even just scraping in 10th spot. He made it in through in 9th. So you've got Danny Rick getting track limits and not even making it out of Q1. The guy that he needs to outperform to show he's on this audition for the Red Bull seat has gone and put it through into Q3. So not a great look for Danny Rick.
And as you said,
weekend.
9th is pretty impressive for Yuki. But he also cracked the top 5 teams. And what I mean by that is it's Ferrari, Red Bull, McLaren, Mercedes, Aston Martin. 5 teams, 2 drivers each. That's basically what I anticipate being the top 10 every week. And that's what I anticipate being Q3 every week. And the only driver from any of the other teams who made it through was Yuki, as you said. And he was the little fly in the ointment of having the perfect 10 at the top. He's like, yeah, what about me, guys? And interestingly, after he threw his little temper tantrum a couple races ago, we kind of said maybe he doesn't have the temperament. Maybe Helmut Marko will notice these things. If anything, he's acquitted himself pretty well since then, and Danny Rick not so much on track. So I don't know. I don't know what Red Bull's going to do with the RB team. All I can say is I saw a lot of GIFs of Liam Lawson kind of licking his lips and shaking his hands at the team like, I'm ready, I'm here.
I think Liam Lawson gets a seat mid-season because either Danny Rick goes to Red Bull or Danny Rick loses his seat.
You think it's one or the other?
I think Lawson gets in that seat.
Oh, wow.
Because Danny Rick leaves.
Yeah.
And Danny Rick is either going to Red Bull or he's out. Because I don't know that they're going to have that much patience with him to let the McLaren slip slide happen. Because remember, it really is a slip slide because he went into that Red Bull car before he got the drive, remember, after they brought him back out of hibernation and he hadn't seen an F1 car for 3,000 years and he's rubbing all the crustiness out of his eyes. And they said, right, go and do a time trial. And he went and put in that Red Bull times close to max. And everybody went, yes, he's still got it. Unleash the beast. Off we go, Danny Rick. Woohoo, yay. And we've got the chassis from the RB19. This is a match made in heaven. Right now, it's a turd.
It is. Good thing I wasn't able to purchase all the V-Carb RB gear, Toro Rosso gear I wanted, or else I'd be sitting on a bumper crop of stuff I wasn't wearing. And then we go to Q3.
Pretend it was Yuki's.
Exactly. And then we go to Q3. I could. Max, of course, takes pole. What's new? Sainz, Perez, Norris, Leclerc, Piastri, Russell, Tsunoda, Stroll, Alonso. Stroll in front of Alonso in Q3, Stroll in front of Alonso in other places we had seen this weekend, at times. But what I found fascinating is Mr. No Appendix, who was first, not that it matters, but first in Q1, who was first in Q2, again, not that it matters, but when it comes down to grid position at Q3 is second, and just a tiny, couple, I think it was 0.27 seconds off Max, but still ahead of Checo and still ahead of Lando and his teammate, who had a bad quali for a change, again, at the wrong time. So, yeah, I again, the story was Max, but to me, at the end of quali, I'm questioning myself, can Carlos bring it to Max?
I agree. And I was just kind of looking, and the Ferrari fan inside me is trying to really not get too overexcited here, and kind of looking at some of the race pace runs in practice. I'm like, Ferrari's looking good. It's looking like it might not just be a Saturday car here. It might actually have some race pace as well. So then on we go to the race. It's midnight. I've managed to stay. Oh no, I did a tactical nap. I will admit that. I set my alarm for 11:50.
That's pretty good. I'm proud of you. That's pretty good. I didn't do that.
I've had to. Couple of hours tactical nap, and up I got. Lights out and away we go. No incidents in the first corners. That's like a rarity in Australia. I'm just waiting for somebody to collect somebody at that first sequence of corners, and Max gets away, and I'm like, oh man. I'm like, yeah, Max is gonna eke out that second that he needs, and he didn't. And I don't think yet we'd seen any of the brake issues. We hadn't seen any of the sliding, so I don't think it was down to that. I think the Ferrari had the pace to stay within the 1 second and get the DRS, and then just seemed to hunt Max down. Now, agree. When Sainz got Max on lap 2, I think the brake issue had just started. I think the corner before, it had done that weird kind of slide around the corner, which gave Sainz the chance to catch him. But he hadn't broken away and got the over 1 second gap like he has in previous races. So as much as we can read into that, because then over the next couple of laps, we just start seeing, oh, there's a puff of smoke. Was a bit more smoke. Is that coming from the engine? Where's that coming from? And very quickly, it was obvious that back tire or wheel brake was on fire.
It was on fire. But one thing from the start that you didn't mention. So I'm watching this, and again, I'm on vacation this weekend. So again, I'm sorry. I may not be as tuned in as I should be. I had to catch up that they'd given Checo the 3-place grid drop for impeding Hulk. Joe, because he had a front wing, but apparently it had a different something than the last front wing. He had started the pit lane. And so I'm watching all this, and Lewis gets on the blower on the grid. He goes, why'd we choose softs? I'm like, weren't you in the meeting like 10 minutes before this, man? Come on. Like, I don't understand. But so anyway, the start is clean, as you say, except when they show the replay, you see this neon green car, Valtteri's car. He's flying. He's going up a couple spots. He went from 13th or 14th to 11th. And I'm like, yes, Valtteri, this is what I like to see. What's going to go wrong for you this week? Don't worry, we'll get there soon. And so I was so excited for Valtteri. And like you said, Carlos, even if Max's brake was stuck on from the beginning, let's just say it was for a second. Carlos was with him in quali the whole time. The times were so similar. I don't think Max pulls off into the sunset here no matter what, even if his brakes didn't catch fire. And that explosion of his brakes in the pit lane as he's entering the pit lane was actually kind of scary. It's a good reminder when the car's on fire, maybe don't bring it into the pit lane. Maybe take care of that out with the marshal and a fire extinguisher away from buildings. What
was it?
People.
Was it the kind of the cover blew out from the pressure, I think they showed on the replay.
It seemed like a pretty big explosion to the right, though, because his car shimmied to the left at that point.
Yeah, it looked like it was the pressure building up around the brakes. I guess it's all kind of the heat and the gas has got nowhere to go because they've got the wheel covers on now, and the wheel cover decided it had enough and decided to make an escape at a high speed. It
was pretty impressive. And so it was Max's first retirement since Australia 2022. So it's been 2 years in a row, with a year off, obviously, in 23, where he's had to retire early.
Yep. And then we had, so both of the McLarens have made a good start, and you had basically Carlos, Leclerc, Norris, Leclerc hanging out in his DRS, Piastri right behind Charles, and then a bit of a gap to George. So it kind of looked like Ferrari and McLaren already, only about lap 8 or 9, were starting to going to be those four were going to be the ones that were going to start pulling away. It looked like it was going to be a 2-stop strategy as well, which really pleased me. They brought the softer compounds this time. So
as you said before, credit to you, you'd said, let's see some softer tires and people manage DEG, and let's see what they have to do to make this happen. You said that, and then on the commentary they said that, and then they basically said, but they only have 2 sets of hards. And one of the people was like, well, maybe they need to be strategic in how they use them and what they learn from it. I'm like, yes, let's make the tires count.
Yes, yeah, and I'm not that interested in tyres as much, but I am interested in
That's
strategy. So
true.
I did like the fact that we weren't just going to get a medium hard one stopper where everyone does the mediums for about 20 laps, puts the hards on, and then all goes into tyre management chess for the rest of the race. Because the two stopper to me always means that you've got double jeopardy because every time you come into the pits, there's a chance that something might go wrong, isn't there, Valtteri and Joe? Um, and then also, where on a two stopper, mainly a second stop, I think, where will you drop out? Where will you come out into traffic? Are you going to get lucky or unlucky? So I just two stoppers all the way for me.
Yeah,
Um,
I loved it. But you speak of tires really fast. Oh boy, this hurts me. And I did not listen to Paul's review yet. I think you have, and I think it'll come up. On lap 9, the early runners on softs come into box. And at this time, Valtteri boxes as well. And if you remember, in Bahrain, Valtteri had a 52-second pit stop where they had problems with the wheel nut. And then in Saudi Arabia, Joe had a 38 or whatever second pit stop where they had trouble with the wheel nut. And I kind of lost my cool. And I said, come on, Sauber, pull it together. What's going on here? So, of course, Valtteri comes in and they have a problem with the wheel nut. And we're looking at a 30-plus second pit stop. Again, 3 races in a row, 2 drivers. Valtteri's second. He comes out last on lap 9. And he had such a great start.
I know.
Ugh.
Did you hear what they said as well in the commentary? I mean, it was late or early, whichever way you want to look at it. So maybe I didn't hear this right, but they made it sound like they know they've got a problem with cross threading on the wheel nut. So they're taking their time and putting everything on slowly to make sure it's all on there.
What?
What's the point of even racing if
That's
you're
what I
going
said.
to take a 30-second race pit stop every time you go in? They looked at that wheel gun like I sometimes look when I'm trying to undo a screw, like in low light, and I can't work out if it's a flathead or a Phillips, and I'm like, have I got the right screwdriver or not? It's like that's okay for me when I'm doing DIY at home. It's not okay for a state-of-the-art F1 team.
No,
It's
it
not.
wasn't even that. It was the movie Speed, where they had to cut the wires, and they're like, they kind of recoil as they go to do the cut. Like, is it the red wire? Is it the white wire? Was the bomb going to go off? And as they go to put the tires on, they're all kind of like leaning backwards, like, let's hope it doesn't get stuck forever.
Oh my! But
And
yeah,
then,
I
sorry, one more
don't know
thing
what
on
to
this.
say.
At one point, they cited him for a pit lane infringement, and I don't know what happened. I had to watch it on rerun on my iPad today, but there was a little bit of one of those wheel nuts went flying across the pit lane, and they cited Valtteri for a pit lane infringement, and they think it was when the wheel nut went dancing. He didn't get any penalties for that, did he?
I don't think so.
Okay, good.
But to be honest, he already had a penalty enough by having his team do a horrendously low penalty. Maybe
Sorry, enough
the
about
stewards
that.
felt sorry for him. Yeah, they were like, there's no point. It's a race ruiner anyway. Talking of race ruiners, we'd already got Max out, lap 17. Lewis, it cuts to him on board, and it doesn't look like the car's going very quickly because it's not. And like they said in the commentary, it didn't seem to explode and chew itself to death. It just sort of turned off. It was just like,
and the bad sound too. It was like off. I actually think he might have just turned it off himself. Like he was just driving along, he took the key, and it was like he turned it. If I had the sound effects this week, this is where Toto would say, "Lewis, we know the car's bad, just drive it, please." And so he turned it while the car was going in drive, and he just turns it off. He's like, "Yeah, I'm done. I'm going to see what Roscoe's doing in the hospitality and hang out for a while."
So then I thought we might get a safety car. We didn't. We got the VSC, which gave a real nice cheap stop for Alonso, and Gasly came in and kind of were able to save 10 seconds. VSC came to an end. DRS was enabled, but crucially, Sainz was 1.1 clear at the time that DRS came back on again. And we had a radio message at this point that Ferrari told them to hold position. I kind of get it. Then they just made their pit stop. They didn't want each other fighting each other, ruining their tires. I'm not sure Charles could have taken it to Sainz either, though, to be honest.
Well, I don't think he could.
Yeah. And we had Perez trying to fight his way through the field, trying to get George. He finally got him on lap 21. I thought, here we go. Checo now, rocket ship. Because every time he'd overtaken somebody, Lewis and George, they both come on the radio and gone, that car's a rocket ship. I was like,
right.
Are they just moaning about how slow theirs is? Or is Checo is he going to go and do a drive now and go and hunt down Harlow? And this is what I thought was going to happen. And it kind of does a little bit, but because he does go and start chasing down Alonso, but never really then goes beyond that.
Yeah, right, exactly. On lap 27, he takes Alonso through pretty easily. I'm thinking Red Bull at his last stop, you could see them putting a little turn on the front wing, giving a little less front wing, getting the rear tires a little more involved. They're on hards now. Those are lighting up. They have less gas now. The car's lighter. I'm like, we are in trouble. Checo's going to start slicing through this field like butter. He gets through a couple guys, like you said. Who was it? It was a Gasman, and then somebody, George, and then Alonso. And then he went into witness protection.
Yeah, I mean, he went on a bit of a charge. And I wrote here that he kind of he managed to get Alonso because Alonso was on mediums and he knew not to bother fighting Checo on different strategies. And his race was really probably against George, so he didn't really make too much of a meal of trying to defend. Also in the DRS, that Red Bull just absolutely flew past. In the meantime, we had kind of both Haas and McLaren swap their cars around due to strategy, and Checo was kind of on a mission. And then all of a sudden, I looked up. And Alonso was back in Checo's DRS. I was like, what's going on here? This is the bit where Checo's got clean air in front of him. He takes off in the rocket ship.
He should be catching up to Charles at this point.
Yeah, it was really bizarre. And then we kind of started getting kind of lap 30 odd around there. We started getting some of the other pit stops. Charles came in, and it was so close when he came out with Perez, and that showed me just how little of an impact that Perez was really having. He wasn't. I was disappointed. I wanted it, obviously, as a Ferrari fan, I was happy with the way it was panning out, but I thought this could be like an epic drive from Checo here.
Yes.
But
it could have been. Yeah. And I actually would say the way we talked about Danny Rick and how he really didn't have a great weekend and the way it kind of happened for him, I'd say Checo didn't either. This was his chance to say, all right, Max is out. You have me here as his rear gunner. I wasn't there for him at the start because I was down in 6th. I am here to bring home 1-2s, and if Max isn't there, I'm here to take the win. Not only did he not take the win, he didn't take a podium. Not only did he not take a podium, he really didn't make a dent after that, as you said, kind of at that point after he passed Alonso. And Alonso was back in his DRS. You know, you mentioned the inversion at McLaren and Haas. That's fine and good. But what I want to highlight is on lap 37, Joe went in for a pit stop, and the wheel nut came back again. This is the first time we've had 2 of them have wheel nut problems in the same race instead of usually just one of them. And then they even said, you know what, we've talked to Sauber, and they're hoping for like a 5 or 6 second pit stop so they don't have problems with the wheel nut. What? You're hoping for a 5 or 6 second pit stop? You're hoping. 2 seconds. We're doing 2 seconds at McLaren. Let's do a 5 or 6, and we'll call it a day. In a 2-stopper, that's 6 seconds. You just gave away for free because you can't get the wheel nuts to work right. That's like you could sit on the grid for this long. Okay, we'll start now, and that way our wheel nuts will work. Give me a break.
I mean, and at this point, I was kind of worrying whether, as we had the second round of pits, whether we were kind of going to get into the lull while people were managing tyres to the end. But like I said earlier, every time there was not action at one part, they would cut to somebody else, and we had Alex really trying to hunt down the Haas for those points. And
defend at the same time. He was in, it was an Albon sandwich with Haas bread.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I got that right.
And Albon was right up behind Hulk at one point, and it looked like he was going for it. And then all of a sudden we saw an onboard, and the Williams was just kind of like off, just flying across grass and stuff. And when they showed it again, the replay, I don't think Hulk got penalised for this, did he? And it looked a bit like a double move in the braking zone, and Alex was not happy about it. Then we got to cheer because Valtteri came in and did, I think, a 3.8 second pit stop. Yay!
I can't believe we're cheering for that. And then we get towards the end, and before we get to the end and the George on Fernando thing, anything else you want to highlight, Rob? Because that's how I close the race in my notes.
Okay, so I would just say that we had, as we kind of came with 10 laps to go, I kind of wrote down here that we had Hulk in the points, Yuki way ahead of Rick, George trying to get Alonso, Norris trying to chase down Charles. Those were kind of our main storylines going into the last 10 laps. The only problem was Norris never really did. I think actually Ferrari played it brilliantly. Sainz had amazing pace. Charles didn't have enough pace to chase down Sainz, I don't think, but every time Norris poked his nose in and got it down to say 2.7, 2.5 seconds, Charles was like, okay, let's crank this back up again, and suddenly it was 3.5 again. So Charles had enough pace to keep Lando at bay, I think. So what we really had now was kind of the Haas and the kind of the battle for the last point, and then we also had George absolutely on a mission to catch Alonso, and he was in his DRS for what felt like the entire last 10 laps.
It was exciting. It was.
It
You
was
watched
really
George
good.
really going for it, and you could tell that Mercedes did not want to do what George was asking it to do. He was giving it everything. He was sliding. He was all over the place trying to get in front of Fernando. And it reminded me, they talked a lot on the telecast about Brazil last year, Fernando, and the time with Checo. I actually thought more about Hungary from 2 years ago when Lewis was behind Fernando and held him up so he couldn't go catch Esteban down the road, and Esteban got his first win.
Yeah.
So this was, I thought, really good defending until maybe it wasn't. And I'd like your thoughts on this because, again, I'm a little uneducated here. I watched the race. I saw a couple tweets. I pasted some tweets in the notes. But it feels like that turn, I believe it's 6. I could be wrong on the number. It's the exact turn where Albon binned it last year. Pretty big, if you remember that. And his car went into the gravel, hit the wall, and kind of bounced into the track a little bit. And I think it was K-Mag who came around the corner or somebody, because I went back last year to the onboards. And it's a bit of a blind corner. And you come around there, and all of a sudden there's a car in the track, and you have to maneuver around a corner with gravel on it and a car in the front. And so it looked to me, again, I could very well be wrong, so feel free to tell me I'm an idiot, everybody. It did look like Fernando was on the brakes early. Like he wanted to push George back so that George couldn't be on his tail coming out of that corner and
100%.
try to get DRS. So I don't want to call it a brake check per se.
It wasn't a brake
It wasn't a brake check. Yeah, exactly. But he did purposefully, I believe, back up George so that George couldn't be that tight coming out of the corner. And George had to slam his brakes. He locked up, lost control, and that's what happened. He went into the wall, right? I mean, am I reading this right?
Yeah, and do you know what? I don't even think Alonso did anything wrong. So last week, we said how K-Mag did genius by accelerating out of corners fast. So accelerating out of corners slowly. So he went into corners at full proper braking, but then just slowly accelerated out because he was trying to hold everybody up behind him. But Alonso here is kind of doing the opposite because
slow into a corner. Yep.
That Mercedes is absolutely flying, and he knows that if George gets good traction out of a corner with like the gazillion of DRS zones that there are in Australia, he's probably going to be easy pickings for him. So it kind of said, there was a statement from him on Twitter where he said, in F1 with over 20 years of experience, sacrificing entry speed to have good exits from corners is part of the art of motorsport. We never drive at 100% every lap and every corner. We save fuel, tyres, brakes. So being responsible for not making every lap identical is a bit surprising. And what he means by that is they looked at the telemetry and they said, that last lap, that corner you took differently from the previous corners, and times you did that corner. He's like, well, yeah, because I'm defending. I think it's a coming together of maybe Alonso maybe misjudged it and lifted a little bit sooner than he meant to, which means he slows down a lot because you don't even need to brake in these cars, do you? As soon as you lift off, the aero just kind of slows the car down. I think George is on an absolute flyer coming up right behind him. I don't know. I thought the 20 seconds was harsh. The penalty he got. And I thought as well, just to put it in greater context, I don't know if you saw the was it the F2, which was the car where the guy just drove the other guy off the road, like just swerved across and took him out, and he smashed into the wall, and they gave him a 5-second penalty for that.
Yeah, F2. Yeah, I did actually.
And saying like, the penalty was for potentially dangerous driving from Alonso, and gave him a 20-second penalty for it. I'm like, as long as it's consistent, as long as next time now somebody does this and slightly brakes too early, they get a 20-second penalty, then nobody's going to have a problem with this. But this just, I don't know.
It feels to me, again, and here's the reasons why I believe there was such a large penalty. Again, and I don't know. But I mentioned it before. It's a bit of a blind corner. So George is coming in on a heater, and he doesn't really know Alonso's going to be basically parked there, for lack of a better term.
Hang on, let me finish. He's right behind him. You can see him going through the corner.
But he doesn't expect him to come off at that point. There's no other runoff. George is on it. It's not coming out of a corner. It's going into a corner. So he started braking super early, effectively, really with no reason to do so. The stewards, one of which was Johnny Herbert, by the way. I don't know, when did Johnny Herbert become a steward? That was the craziest thing I saw. He'd signed the note. I'm like, Johnny Herbert? He gets kicked off of TV and becomes a steward? I'm like, make me a steward, bro. And so the stewards considered that Alonso affirmatively chose to perform an unusual maneuver at this point to be an aggravating circumstance. So, I mean, I get they're saying he did this. It just, 20 felt a lot. I agree. But it also was incredibly scary. And maybe they're judging the outcome, which they shouldn't do. This isn't hockey where you give a penalty based on how hurt someone gets from a maneuver, which is what they shouldn't do either. And so my point is, when George was laying there sideways, did you hear the team radio of him pleading for a red flag because he knows he's in the middle of the track sideways with his bottom, the floor, exposed to oncoming traffic?
That's got nothing to do with like
Correct.
you say, you shouldn't give a penalty on
No, you shouldn't.
And also, and it looked a hell of a lot worse when it showed the replay, because he was up on his side, like, oh my gosh, the impact must have been awful to flip the car up.
No,
And actually it wasn't. It was the wheels. The tethers did their job and kept the wheels attached to the car, but then kind of got wedged under the side and flipped it up on its side, and almost in slow motion. So
one of my MVPs, Lance Stroll's engineer, because Lance was coming up on the accident first. And his engineer is immediately on there, yellow flag, car in the track. And then when he sees what's happening, he says, you have a car in the middle of the track, take evasive maneuvers before Lance even gets there. And again, it is getting there is a bit of a blind corner. That's exactly where Albon was last year, not as far into the track and not sideways. So Lance was able to avoid, the first car on the scene was able to avoid it. And Lance, if you remember in Baku 22, 23, one of those years, he was sideways with no wheels on the middle of the beginning of that back straight. So Lance was asking for a red flag. I'm a little confused why we didn't go red flag. We don't have to get into this because it doesn't matter. Ending
last
under
lap
VSC, whatever. Yeah, fine. I don't have a problem with it. But I don't like when cars rock up to the scene not knowing how bad it is at first.
Yeah, but the VSC was tripped real quick, and they all get that lit up on their dashboards. So there was only about one car that really arrived at the scene, and even that, like you say, was under double yellow. So, yeah, I think the stewards did fine there. I just don't understand the consistency between physically driving another car off the road on purpose on the same race weekend as something like this. One is a 5-second, one is a 20. You just need consistency. It shouldn't matter on what series you're in, whether you're in F1 or F2. Driving another competitor off the road on purpose is way more dangerous, I would say. But anyway, let's not get bogged down in the fact that meant that we got Ferrari 1-2.
Wow.
We got the Italian and the Spanish national anthem played. We had Lando up there as well for his first podium of the season. I would say, really, really good race. Really enjoyed it. There was quite a lot of battles. Maybe not as many overtakes as we'd like. Maybe some of the overtakes were a little bit DRS powered. But like I say, it flew by. Never really any lulls. Always something to see. Seeing what did we have? We had both the Haas get into the points, didn't we? Didn't we come in?
We did, yeah. Hulkenberg 9th and Magnussen 10th. Albon was 11th. I referenced it earlier. He almost got that point they went for.
Yeah, penalty meant that Alonso finished behind Stroll. Tsunoda's up there in 7th.
Danny Rick in 12th.
Yeah. Yeah, so
the only cars who finished at the back were the last four were the Alpines and Valtteri and Joe, who are still waiting on the wheel nuts to be reattached.
Yeah, I know. So we have to give or maybe I'll edit in the King of the Pits and the Pits music, being as you haven't got your soundboard with you. But we need to do our King of the Pits and the Pits. So you can go first this week. Who is your King of the Pits?
Hey, you're the King of the Pits.
For me, it's incredibly easy. It's Carlos. I don't need that appendix Sainz. He's a smooth operator. I wish I had the sounds. God, this would be a great week for the sounds. Stop inventing. So I thought he was great all weekend. You could see after quali, and I did stick around watching it late, not live, but late, to see his interview, and he was ginger. I mean, he was sore. He was not happy after quali. And then he goes out for an hour and 40 minutes, and you could still see after the race, he's like, God, I got to get out of this car. And he kind of just put his butt on the halo and slid out. I'm like, that is one poor bastard who just won. And a quick stat, since I don't have stats either this week. Sorry, guys. We'll be back to normal next week. Normal service will resume. But he's, as we all have talked about, the only non-Red Bull winner since November 22. 22. It's 24. He's the only person other than a Red Bull driver who's won. He's won twice, Singapore being the other. Do you know what else Singapore has in common? George was going for it on the last couple laps, trying to catch somebody and binned it, big style. Do you know but you're saying that's just a weird coincidence. Carlos has won 3 times. The other time he won was at Silverstone At least I'd like to go back to the Silverstone win and when he was there. And so the Silverstone win, if you remember that, George didn't finish that race either because he came together with Joe. Joe went over the wall. George pulled over to help him out.
Yeah.
So George has never finished a Carlos win, I think. Didn't Carlos win one before at McLaren? I can't remember. No, I don't think he did. He finished second behind Pierre at Monza. That's right. Okay, so there's a stat for you that I just invented on the fly.
Woo!
But yeah, he's my king of the pits. How about you? King of the pits.
No, absolutely the same.
Yeah,
so
Carlos.
let's go for your the pits.
You're the pits.
Oh God, I don't want to do this. It's a shared honor between Checo
You
and
know
Danny.
how I feel about you know how I feel about shared. Come
You're
on,
going to deal with it.
get
Checo
off the,
and
get
Danny
off the
Rick.
fence. Get the splinters out your ass.
Checo then, because I think he's proven himself. He's not the number 2 they need. I hate to say it, I really do. You can't have a weekend like this. The reason you're there at the top team is not to be a good driver; it's to be a great driver. And I don't care if you're the second driver to Max. You have to be great when they need you, and he wasn't. So I give it to Checo. I was going to give it to Danny Rick, so feel free to give it to Danny Rick.
That's who I'm going to give it to then,
that's
because
fine.
I was
I
really,
knew
really
it.
close. I was split between just giving it to the Sauber team for their horrendous pit stops, or Danny Rick or Checo. But you've taken Checo. I'm going to give it to Danny Rick because yes, maybe call him unlucky for getting a track time deleted and finding himself down towards the back, but he had a whole race to do something about that. I really didn't make a dent. Yuki's up there making hay while the sun shines and getting points, and Danny didn't move through the field at all, really. The only reason he kind of went forward is because Joe and Bottas, like you say, are still having pit stops now. So and other people crashed out. So not a great day for Danny Rick. So he gets my hits.
Quick before we go to Paul, can we just say one thing real quick? We did not mention much of McLaren. We did a little during the race and inverting the drivers. Lando finished third on the podium. You already said that. But Oscar was fourth. And at a race weekend where obviously Australia favored their car a bit, where Mercedes was nowhere, Lewis was nowhere before his engine turned off, George was doing his best to hustle that junk around the track. Aston Martin didn't look so great this whole weekend. They were always in the 7th, 8th area, and Lance was up there with Fernando. McLaren made something. They made something while they could, and they acknowledged, Lando did, they're still way behind Ferrari and way behind Red Bull, but they're not way behind Red Bull Checo. They're way behind Red Bull Max. And so we've often said that Max Red Bull is different than Checo Red Bull, and that's why Checo was my pits, because you can't have such a delta between teammates anymore in this sport. And so, yeah, good on McLaren. Good on McLaren, 3rd and 4th. That's a job well done.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we'll get overexcited about all of this, but from like a standings perspective, we've now got Max sitting at the top on 51 points. Charles at 47, Sergio 46, Sainz 40. I mean, it's kind of close. It'll be interesting to see in Japan what happens in terms of if the Ferrari really does have pace and can take it again. You know, we can't guarantee that the Gremlins are going to creep in and take Max out. I'd actually like to see Max beaten on the track.
Me too.
I'd love. It was great to have a different winner, but I would like to see Max actually beaten wheel to wheel as opposed to the Gremlins creeping in.
Yeah, last thing before Paul from me, and I think I may have said that already, is there was so much to recap. If we're going to sacrifice Max's race for the spirit of entertainment and someone went out there and sabotaged his brake duct so we could get rid of Max and have someone else win, I would have liked more action at the front. Like next time I'm ordering up the race of my dreams, like more fighting for the first spot if we could, because we don't see that normally. So that would be my first request. And my second is a note that after 3 races, if I told you that 7-time world champion, one of the GOATs of all time, Mercedes great Lewis Hamilton, going to Ferrari next year, sitting on 2 more points than Ollie Behrman, who raced once with 10 minutes notice, would that shock you? Because that would shock me.
What would shock me is that Lance Stroll is sitting 1 point ahead of Lewis Hamilton.
Well, you said he's the 3rd best driver on the grid last year at this time.
At this time, yeah. But okay. So I will insert the music.
You don't even have to. You told people you will, but if you don't, but they'll just
no.
know you
It will
didn't.
play. Well, the Pitlane Paul music will play now, and then you'll press play on Paul, and it'll all be seamless. So you press play, and let's listen to Paul.
He's Mr. Pidside.
Hey now. Oh no, drop my phone. I'll start that again. Hey now. Right, I'm back. I didn't drop my phone this time. That's Melbourne done and dusted. A new winner. Well, not a new winner, but just not Max, which is obviously a bonus. Well, not a bonus. I like Max. And it's not his fault that he's pretty good. So, actually, I'm going to start that again, because that was a terrible start. Okay. Hey now. So,
I love this.
well, Max didn't win. That's that then. No, listen, it was actually a good race. I'm really pleased for Ferrari and Fred. Carlos as well, you know, he's the one who's not going to drive. So for him, it's a little bit of like fingers up, I guess. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it was good. I mean, the Max one's interesting. It's almost like, I don't know, it's almost like they maybe left some brake cooling covered or something. It seemed very strange for that to happen. I don't know. They might have said what happened. Who knows? Then Lewis also. I mean, terrible day for Mercedes, let's be honest. But how nice to actually see a Ferrari 1-2. You know, it's a sign they're sort of moving in the right place. So anyone who doubted Lewis's decision to go there, like, you know, have a look what's in front of you. So it's pretty cool. And it was actually, yeah, then the battle with McLaren, I actually really did quite enjoy it. I mean, look, I'm going to just touch on us again. Another pit stop issue. It's getting very frustrating because it was easy points that we've lost today. Joe, yeah, I don't exactly know what happens, isn't it? I don't know. It's just sort of like when it's such fine margins in close things, it's a little bit frustrating to have these. So yeah, great for Ferrari, great for McLaren, great for Oscar. I wish he would have got third place. To see him on the podium would have been amazing. Yuki bringing the car home, you know, Haas getting points. And then obviously start of the week, the decision with Williams and the chassis debacle. Now look, I mean, I find it strange they don't have a third chassis made yet for whatever reason. I do find that very unusual. But yeah, okay, you know, who knows? I don't know the ins and outs of that one, but then maybe to take the drive off of Logan and give it to Alex after Alex crash. You know, it leaves me a little bit sore, if I'm being honest. I like Logan a lot. He's a really good kid. Annoyingly, I was chatting to him Friday night and I was asking him how the car was, and I had no idea that they subbed him out. So I had to send him a WhatsApp, be like, "Oh, dude, I didn't know." So I think that's a little bit of, I mean, I guess I can use the line shithousery from Williams. I'm not a fan of that. I think it's wrong. But it was their decision. And look, if he would have brought points home, great. He didn't, so okay. And then, yeah, I mean, like I say, it was... Yeah, when I don't know, when you're having Russell, Hamilton... Max not finish a race, you know, there's 3 top 10 cars there that are dropped out. You've got to be the ones that capitalise, and so credit to the teams that did. It's a hard one for personally, obviously with Valtteri, it's a very hard one at the moment. Dealing with this, it's he drove his socks off all weekend. His performance in the race was superb. His race pace was. Was quicker than Stroll and Russell at points, which for the car we've got is good. So we leave here a little bit optimistic as well. We know the pace is there. You've got to you've got to take the positivity out of this, as mad as that might sound right now. And that's it. Melbourne, probably the fastest week I think I've had. Considering I can remember sat recording the podcast last week with you guys when I was sat in Adelaide, and this week is gone, and I'm just sort of like, how is this week gone this fast? It's a little bit mad. I think I touched on it. That I go into the Gold Coast, I relax up there, and I go onwards to Japan. It seems mad to go back to Japan after being there only a few months ago anyway, and the temperature in Japan this time of year is pretty cold, so I doubt it's going to get... it's not going to be very warm over there. So yeah, look, a week off, a week to relax, a week to recover, and then we go again. That's the only thing I can really say. I'm a little bit flat, not through the race. I really not. Like I said, I'll stand by it. I think the race is actually quite good. It was enjoyable, even though I swore a little bit during it with the pit stops.
So did we, Paul.
And anyone who doesn't see a Ferrari 1-2 as being very, very nice and special for the sport, then you're not a realist. I know, Rob, you're a big Ferrari fan, so I hope it gave you a big smile. Secretly, I was actually quite happy for them as well. And it's just nice to see someone else who isn't Max winning races. And again, nothing to do with Max. He's a great guy, but there we go. I'm going to go and have a sympathy beer, probably a sympathy kebab, and might get sympathy drunk. Who knows? Over and out, guys. And I will speak to you in Japan in a few weeks' time. Wow.
Paul, thanks, man. That was
awesome.
That was a heck of a review.
Yeah, and we probably didn't touch on Valtteri's pace had been great. Those probably were points on the table that got
100% there were points on the table.
Yeah, so
he was running 11th or 10th or somewhere in there when he pitted for the first 40 hours stop.
I know. So anyway, let's not finish on a downer. We haven't got.
I got fantasy.
Haven't got a preview. Oh, we got fantasy to do, haven't we?
I got fantasy, baby. I got it right here on my phone. Even though I'm in a hotel room kneeling on the floor, sitting in front of a chair to do this, I have it on my phone, and here it is. It was not a great week for me, but you're not here to hear about my week. You're here to hear about your week. And so let's talk about the top 10 in the Dirty Side League for Australia. And these are still somehow provisional points. I don't know. It's 14 hours after the race, so I don't know what the heck the game is waiting for at this point. But in first place with a monster week, Kimmy's Yacht, Selena. Nice job, Selena. You nailed it. Followed by Shui Transmitted Disease from Matt.
Sorry, how many points did she nail it?
243. The second place team, 213. Because of all the chaos this week, a lot of top drivers out to Paul's point in the race itself. It also hit fantasy. So, again, Selena, 243. Second place, Shui Transmitted Disease, 213 from Matt. Waystar Royko from Busan at 210. Lord William the First, William, great job, 208. And then we're followed by Professor's B Team, Predestinado, Merckstappen, Carlando MJ, F1 Fantasy Hub, and 10th is F1 Fantasy HQ. The two experts made it into the top 10. And I would say the third expert, Andy, Tails I Win, was 11th. And Yank the Mic, who we interact with a ton on Twitter, was 12th. So, again, I'm not going to go through the whole league. I could keep going. A lot of friends of the pod right after that. I was 18th at 157 points. I had to use the whatever the one is make as many changes as you want, but stay under the cost cap. And so I got rid of, everybody, and I had 157 points in 18th. And if I keep scrolling, Rob had 110 points.
110, because once you've doubled Max.
Yep.
But having said that, we never really shine a light on the bottom. I do just want to put my sympathy out to bottom of this week, Studio VRM Racing, Roger Mader, minus 40 points because he was all in on Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, and Mercedes.
Were those the teams I gave him a negative 40?
Oh, he got negative 40 for Lewis, negative 10 for Max, negative 21 for Mercedes, and then had to hope that Tsunoda, Magnussen, Albon, and RB could get some positive points, which not enough. So
if we had funds, I would send a T-shirt for negative 40, but we don't, so I can't and I won't. But so the top 5 after the first 3 races: DJP Racing, Dan, Kimi, Hakkinen, Niku, Tails I Win, Andy, San Gaucho F1, Manuel, and a tie for 5th, Real Karuna from Aryadev, I apologize if I got that wrong, and Waystar Royko from Busan. So, again, a great top 5. Thank you guys for listening and being part of the Dirty Side League. We are only 3 races in, but yes, at the Midway, there will be a T-shirt for the Midway leader. And that is a positive to end that week on.
Oh, a glorious positive. We had Carlos Sainz going from operation to
How does he not have a drive, the drive he wants? How
I
come he can't walk around and just go, put me there?
No. We're not finishing on negativity.
All right.
Finishing
You're
on.
right. Yeah.
We've got Carlos top of the step. We've got Charles next to him for Ferrari 1-2. So Ferrari fans rejoice. Lando getting his first podium of the season with Oscar right behind him. The Ferraris look fast. The McLarens, like you say, look like they could take it. Let's see what Japan brings, although we've got to try and come up with some content for next week first. So take us out, Brian, from your hotel room in Boston.
Well, it was awesome weekend to see people actually competing for the top of the race. Someone not named Max, and to Paul's point, not that we wanted him not to win, but it was fun to see people competing, and we hope you all have a wonderful week wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Keep on doing your thing, because in 2 weeks' time we're in Japan for a race, and next week Rob and I will be back with more content, and I will have my full soundboard. Hope you guys are all fantastic. Be well, be safe, talk soon.